Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas. Fr0zen versus PNC is coming up as our third matchup today. It'll be a Token Druid versus a Cyclone Mage. But it's not just an average Token Druid, and it's not just your average Cyclone Mage. Fr0zen has a mech package featuring the new card Snip Snap, the golden legendary from Rise of the Mechs, Explodinator, which is probably my new favorite card that's not Snip Snap in that deck, and Ziliax with a little bit of war gear and some other interesting tech like hungry crabs.
Yes.
There's a lot of spiciness. Let's break it all down, TJ. What do you like? What do you dislike? And what do you think is just bad passive play on Fr0zen's behalf?
Nothing passive about this deck, Dan, which I love. Pure aggression. And Fairy Dragon is probably the card that I like the most in this deck. Snip Snap as well, honorable mention. But Fairy Dragon is just so good against both Mage and Rogue currently. And you can tell what kind of decks Fr0zen expected this week because of his choice to bring Token Druid. I think he was expecting Rogues, I think he was expecting Mages, and also because of that Tertiary deck, I think he would have just wanted to have a game plan in case Murloc Shaman came out in full force. But I was playing this deck a lot on the day that the deck lists were submitted, and it felt good. It does have some draws that are dead, and the lack of Whispering Woods feels kind of weird, just because you don't have that single card explode onto the board turn, but everything is more sticky, and you have the option of going tall instead of wide because of the mech package, because of Snip Snap, and because of the replicating menace. You can consolidate your board a little more than you could otherwise in Token Druid, which kind of makes it, that option makes it feel better overall, despite the lack of Whispering Woods. So, like the deck overall, Token Druid still kind of beats itself sometimes, which I think is the big downfall of the deck.
Right, you draw the buffs, you draw the awkward synergy, like Savage Roar, Soul Defar's, Blessing of Agent. You're like, wow, this hand does literally nothing.
Yeah, it does beat itself, but I think Mage is also a deck that kind of beats itself sometimes. And over the course of my practice, I was consistently beating Mages, unless something crazy from Mana Cyclone came out.
Yes.
And that was the matchup where I felt the best in, especially in Game 1.
I think the tertiary deck here from PNC is a lot more important than the primary because, as we mentioned, it's a Mana Cyclone deck, but it doesn't have the normal top end. In fact, it's got Caligos, Power of Creation, Astromancer. PNC was anticipating a lot more Warrior, looks like, to start things off.
Yes.
And then a secondary deck was a counter to a OTK Holy Wrath Paladin because Spellword Jeweler is a minion that makes you immune to hero powers and spells. At least being targeted by them until your next turn. And then Hakar the Soul Flayers, when they deck out and get Shirvala, they end up killing themselves a lot of the time.
Yep.
And then for the tertiary deck, it seems like he's acknowledging the more aggressive lineups. I think the most important cards in the Cyclone Mage here are actually the ones in the middle. I think Twilight Drake and Ziliax, along with Conjurer's Calling, of course, are fairly important. I don't think you get the time and luxury to play Mountain Giant because of the need to trade a lot into the board, because you just can't really let them get big wide buffs. You can't let them get the Savage Roar off and kill you. It's very scary. And the thing about Token Druid is that if you don't have a lot of AoE clears to answer it like Warrior, every single board that they have is just a threat that can develop into more threats. And the reason why I also like the fact that that Fr0zen include this mech package with no Whispering Woods is that the game plan, like you said, is more versatile. Token Druid is a fairly one-dimensional deck, the traditional one. You just go wide, you buff, you kill with Savage Roar. That's just like what you do. But in Specialist format, if people know that and they just load up with any form of AoE, your deck just gets blown out.
Yeah.
So by having a mech package with things that can go tall or wide, you give yourself flexibility in order to play around those options. And because of Magnetize also gives it additional depth to do exactly that, or maybe both with Snip Snap.
Yeah, and also Ziliax in the deck, which is not a common Token Druid inclusion. Maybe more so nowadays, but especially towards the beginnings of this metagame of Rise of Shadows, pretty much didn't exist in any Token Druid deck. And I think the deck felt good, but I think Token Druid out of any deck in the metagame is the most susceptible to having dead draws. And giving time for the mage to just draw cards if they want to, and play Mountain Giant and play a slower game plan and get those Conjurer's Callings off, that's where maybe the weakness will come in.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's fair. He does have a good amount of 1-drops, though. I like Crystallizer and Mekaru. I mean, those just make sense. And we'll see how things like Fairy Dragon fare. It might just be one of those games where it ends super quickly, depending on how fast of a start Token Druid gets. And if PNC has a draw similar to ETC, which is great power as the game goes up and ramps, he's going to be too slow because playing Mountain Giant on 4 is it's going to be on trading duty a lot of times if they're starting to become 2/2, 3/3, 4/4s on the other side. So we'll go ahead and focus on that. In the meantime, take a look at the standings. Fr0zen is tied, I believe, in 2nd place with Strife0. And then, of course, there's the tiebreaker, so they're not actually tied. But a win here would effectively put him in a tied record with Eddie, which would be really big. And then I believe this is Fr0zen's last match here for the regular first half of the season before he starts getting rematches.
Yep. And looking forward to the rest of the day as well, because that bottom of the standings could be shaken up a bit. For instance, if PNC wins, Bloodyface, and one of the other wins, then we have a huge jumble in the middle of the pack. Because Fr0zen will go down to 4-3, PNC will go up to 3-4, and then Muzzy and Firebat are also kind of in that middle there. So kind of an interesting standings. It's a lot different than what we see from potentially the other regions, where some of the standings have like a player like Fino undefeated and then all the way down to just like 2 wins. So we have a very competitive spread across our divisions, which is kind of cool. Anything could still happen moving into the final 3 weeks of regular season play.
Yep. Fr0zen versus PNC, Bloodyface versus Amnesiac, and then Strife0 versus the Muzz, the 1-drop Muzz. We're waiting for some of the players. I think we're there's a slight delay, as you guys can tell. Normally we jump into the game by now. But make sure to get your predictions in, and we'll see how everything shapes up. Our predictions, we don't actually post them up directly, but we have a internal caster fantasy league where we just kind of have players and see how we're doing. My points are on the line because Fr0zen's playing right now. And I believe our producer Josh's points on the line because he picked PNC. Or perhaps I think he might have actually made some trades, so maybe PNC's not on his roster. But TJ, how are you doing in fantasy this week?
I didn't do well last week.
Yeah. No, last week, TJ won like everything the first week, and then this 3rd week, I think none of your players won. I think one player got a win.
Well, I am dedicated to my player stand. I'm not making any trades for the rest of the season.
Well, you're invested in you have Eddie and you have Strife0 and Zole, and I think last week wasn't very good for you.
Yes.
But this week,
Eddie won.
Eddie won. Strife0 plays later today.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm feeling good.
In fact, Strife0 plays Muzzy. That's me versus you. Muzzy was my 1st-round pick.
Stakes are high.
Yeah. Honestly, I felt like I got away with the steal because Muzzy was picked really far down the list for a 1st-round draft pick, and I was like, whew, you guys are sleeping on the Muzz.
He was stuck in Conquest, Dan.
Living in the past.
He was living in the past. I know he was going through a lot of stuff in his personal life, moving to California.
Yeah. I mean, they picked other scrubs like Hunter Ace and Just Saying in front of Muzzy, and I was offended.
All players stuck in Conquest, and where are all those players now? Middle of the pack or worse.
Saying's tied for last place going into today.
Yeah, even Hunter Ace is not doing particularly well. He's in the middle of the standings.
Yeah, middle of the standings.
Yeah.
All right, let's go into the game 1. We're enough stalling here. Fr0zen having 2 important cards, I'd say, which is Microtech Controller. I think that card is very good, an Explodinator. In fact, if he had a 1-drop, this would just be the nuts hand, I'd say.
Not that many 1-drops in the deck. Fr0zen's Token Druid deck does run more 1-drops than the average Token Druid. Yeah. I mean, the average Token Druid runs like 2 Acorn Bears, and that's it. Yeah. Some of the mech ones run double Mekaru as well. But is able to pick up Acorn Bear. It actually pitched everything.
Yeah, he really wants to have a 1-drop on 1. I think that's the most important thing for the deck. And if he kept his hand, he would do nothing. I mean, he could play Power of the Wild on 2, but he'd be most likely playing nothing for the first couple turns. Oh my gosh, Shooting Star. So PNC, because he chose to go for this route, doesn't have Sea Giants in the deck. Oh man.
Hot diggity dog.
mean, Shooting Star is great, but you can't target Fairy Dragons. What you can do is coin out the Twilight Drake next turn.
You can.
And Twilight Drake is important. I seriously think that my criticism for PNC is that he didn't put his second Twilight Drake in this deck. The more I played with this, I was like, wow. People think about Dragon Mage and they think, oh, you play like the cool dragon synergies, right? Like Scale Worm and Crowd Roasters. Like, actually, I think the most important cards are like Twilight Drake and sometimes.
It's like fighting for the board.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just
Dragon Maw Scorcher also would have been really good. It's funny because PNC took a hybrid approach. He took half of the Khadgar Dragon Mage, it took half of the Mana Cyclone Mage, and just had this unholy matrimony of sorts. And has some of the best of both, but also misses some of the important utility and tools of the other.
Yeah. Shooting Star here gonna be very clutch.
Yeah, that hurts. That hurts a lot, given that he has Blessing of the Ancients.
Yep.
Fr0zen, of course, recognizing the power of this Fairy Dragon, he could choose to go wide. He can also choose to use the Blessing of Ancients here.
Yeah, he go Mekaru Blessing of Ancients, the next turn Squirrel Blessing of Ancients. He's free to trade over this Khadgar, just because he knows that, as we mentioned, the Fairy Dragon cannot be pinged off. Twilight Drake is good.
Yeah, Twilight Drake is, like, now that PNC stalled for enough time, it's good. I like that he used Khadgar there to just basically buy time. He knew that there's a high likelihood that Khadgar wouldn't trade into the Fairy Dragon. If it did, pure upside. You're able to trade it. You didn't even have any summoner cards with it anyways. But here's the real key of PNC strategy, which is having Twilight Drake do trading. It's not as powerful as they'd like it to be. It's only a 4/6, but still good enough to get some trading done for a while and keep the board in a really safe spot. I wonder what PNC else is considering. He has 2 Arcane Intellects. I guess maybe he feels like he needs to dig for something more like swingy and deterministic.
I think you have to fight for the board now, and then draw cards once things have calmed down a little bit.
Ooh, the Explodinator. So the Explodinator, what it does is allows Fr0zen to, like, because he knows that with his Twilight Drake play, that Blessing of the Ancients is a good play still with Squirrel, Blessing of the Ancients, but you know that Fire Dragon's not going to be protected anymore. So by playing the Explodinator, it's an investment into other cards in his hand, like the 2 Soul of the Forests. Not to mention the threat of Savage Roar. And because people don't want to kill the Goblin Bombs that come out of Explodinator, that just naturally makes it synergize with Soul of the Forest, Blessing of the Ancients, and Savage Roar. Because if you've played your fair share against Mech Hunters, Goblin Bombs, you just want to leave those things alone.
I wonder.
PNC has the Ray of Frost to stall. He also has Arcane Intellect, which I think he might start off with here.
Yeah. I think he's got Arcane Intellect and take off the highest power on board.
I'd even be as far as to guess that PNC might use his Rays of Frost here. Oh boy. Now I feel like you don't really want to use your Rays of Frost, because now you can use Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mana Cyclones, and go for that next turn.
So let's say he trades over Fairy Dragon and pings. He knows if there's a Blessing of Ancients in hand. So that'd be 5, 9, plus Savage Roar would be 10. He's dead to a Savage Roar if he doesn't freeze one of the higher attack minions.
The upside is that you have more spells to get Frost Nova, to get Cone of Cold, to get Blizzard. Fr0zen has Evil Cable Rat, which can give him other really nice things. Druid does have a decent amount of damage spells that people don't really consider as burst.
I honestly think this is
a Soul of the Forest.
Evil Cable Rat, Soul of the Forest, and trade.
Trade the Explodinator.
Trade the Explodinator. Soul of the Forest is harder to use than Blessing of the Ancients, I think. But looks like Fr0zen's going to go for the damage plan.
Interesting that he's not going for the buff on the evil cable rat first.
Time waits for no one.
Why did he do this in this order?
Judging by his body language, it was not on purpose.
Huh. I'm trying to look if, like, I first thought he wasn't going to play minions, but I then realized there's no Rabble Bouncers, no Sea Giants. Those are in the tertiary deck that I think PNC will play.
Maybe he like realized that too late and was gonna like hero power and consolidate his board. But don't know if it'll matter much. I think this is probably gonna come down to what PNC can get from this Mana Cyclone.
Yeah, PNC could make a couple arguments here if he even should play this Arcane Intellect, because then he's leaving up very little mana for him to use any of the spells that he gets, assuming he didn't pick up the Evocation. There's 18 cards, so there's an 11% chance that he would have drawn an Evocation in that spot, but maybe that's what he feels like his win percentage is in this position.
Alright, looking for a mirror image, more Rays of Frost.
Shooting Star! And the lack of the buff!
Oh, so it does matter! Now, I don't think the Witchy Lackey would have come down pre-buff, even if he had got that first. I don't know. No, it would have. It would have.
Well, if he kept those minions on the board, it would have been a 2-attack, 6, 8. He might have had lethal with the Savage Roar. If he was able to get that buff off.
I think he almost certainly would have. Regardless, though, it just would have been way more damage, and maybe just the
I mean, this is still
pent-up damage from the boombots would have eventually won the game.
This is still a really tough position for PNC regardless. He might just have to go for more card draw here in this position.
So he can, with this Arcane Intellect, he can pick up a Mountain Giant and Conjurer's Call it twice. Oh no, you can only Conjurer's Call it once, so it costs 3.
Minions.
I mean, the deck is a lot of minions. This is more minions than the average deck. Like, look at his hand. It's clogged up with Astromancer, Calicos, Archmage Tinnitus, Harrison Jones.
Oh my goodness. He's going for Luna's Pocket Galaxy so he can discount things to 1 mana and then go for Research Project to draw.
So, Mountain Giant, if he draws it, will cost 0. So he can still Conjurer's Call even if he draws a Mountain Giant.
Okay. The Rays still help here.
Okay.
Two plus 6. Oh, there's 2 Savage Roars.
Double Savage Roar.
Yeah, that's going to close it out. Fr0zen had a moment where it looked like the mage was going to swing it, but able to get over that hump, and the power of the Token Druid against the mage. It's just the threat of even the smallest minions. That was just a couple of 1/1s on the board, TJ.
Yeah.
It was only a couple of damage, and yet it converted into half of the life total. This is the power of Token Druid that everyone knows and is extremely afraid of. However, I want to say that it's important that Fr0zen won this game because I think the tertiary deck for PNC makes a world of difference. He's no longer holding Astromancer, no longer holding Harrison Jones, Power Creation, and a Calicos doesn't help him. He has a Frost Nova, 2 halftime Scavengers, which are replacing the Twilight Drake. Even though you lose Twilight Drake, you get the armor. A Rabble Bouncer, and a Sea Giant. That's much higher application than I would say the other top end that PNC has.
Yeah. And honestly, despite that game looking pretty one-sided, PNC did have some outs there.
Yes.
He went very deep in his deck without drawing a Mountain Giant. And at the end there, his Mountain Giant would have been cheap enough to where he could still play it and still have the potential to get double Grave Horror, which would have bought him a ton of time, probably enough time to win in the game. So he still played in a way that gave himself outs to possibly win. And Fr0zen, you can see shaking his head there at the end of that game. He knows that just the mistake that he made of not buffing up all of his minions, got punished by the shooting star, could have cost him. But like you said, important win because it's going to be even tougher as this matchup progresses. And I don't foresee Fr0zen making any changes. And we did get confirmation that he's staying on primary. His secondary deck looked like it's made for warriors. He's got the second Force and double war gear, as well as Archmage Vargoth.
Yep, good stuff against the slower decks.
Yeah, and his tertiary deck is specifically for Murloc Shaman. Because it has
or Murloc Druid. Or Murloc Priest.
Yes. True.
Yeah, those are all possibilities, TJ.
They are.
Or Murloc Rogue, a.k.a. Water Rogue.
Whoa, Dan. That's really offensive to Honorace.
Yeah, I'll expect a thank you tweet on Twitter soon enough, TJ. Going to game number 2 here, Fr0zen has the Dreamwave Gardens, Power of the Wild, EVK, Rat, Microtech Controller. This is a pretty solid opening hand. I do feel like Token Druid benefits a lot from having the coin and the extra card because they often need to have the proper resources to make sure that they can go wide. And they can really compensate for being a mana behind by just going an additional minion on the board. More importantly, it's like Fr0zen can squeeze out plays right before PNC's best turns.
PNC just threw away Halftime Scavenger and Conjurer's Calling.
Well, I can understand Conjurer's Calling is not exactly that great in this matchup.
But those two cards together are fantastic.
I like this Halftime Scavenger.
Runs out on me.
I already told you how I'm a big fan of Twilight Drake.
Yeah,
Because
Halftime Scavenger, it guaranteed lives, it trades over, you Conjurer's Calling, and you fight for the board.
What shall we hunt?
Now, I understand his reasoning. He says, I want Sorcerer's Apprentice, I want Mana Cyclone,
Oh.
I want to build a big board and go off.
Okay, well, PNC can go off. When I say off, I mean he can put a whopping 3 spells in his hand. Or he can draw 3 spells with Book of Specters. And I say that facetiously, of course, because Book of Specters will immediately discard that. But his deck has a lot of spells in it. That is why he's not playing Book of Specters in his normal list. This is not one that was generated through normal means because he has Element of Evocation, Magic Trick, Mirror of Image, Ray of Frost,
He has
Arcane Intellect.
He has
Conjurer's
15
Call.
minions and 10 spells in his hand right now. In his deck right now. So he still has way more minions and spells.
He does, but I think it's 12 spells.
Is it?
He cut one of them Power Creation, but he put another spell in, Frost. So that's 13 actually, 13 spells.
Oh.
That's a pretty decent amount. And when you start going 1370 versus 1210, that's a pretty big split. Given that, I mean, I guess he's already drawn a couple of his spells because he's. No, you're right because he's drawn the 2 mirrors and the evocation.
Yeah, I think
so
it was
10.
Yeah.
You are correct, and the magic tree, so it's actually even more so. Interesting that Fr0zen went for Power of the Wild so early, but looks like he just wants to chew through the minion board state to make sure the Sea Giant doesn't come down as early as, well, this turn. Cinderstorm is also just so good against Token Druid. PNC keeps picking up Shooting Star and Cinderstorm. Those are just like the ideal
What
spells
to do?
against you.
What to
Yeah,
do?
Arcade Missile's also very good. There's a lot of good mage spells against Token Druid.
Yeah.
Blizzard, Flame Strike, great for the late game.
Yeah.
What to do? What to do?
PNC, I don't know the value of this counterspell. My opponent already used a coin, so the value of counterspell goes up. But the deck is a lot of minions.
It is, but honestly, a deck with a lot of minions does mean that counterspell is usually more effective. Because Fr0zen doesn't have any spells that he can just throw away. Like if Sheep's spell is Power of the Wild, you just use one of them. If you use Blessing of the Ancients or Forest Aid in the counterspell, you don't even get the twin spell. And like Soul of the Forest, Swipe, and Savage Roar are either way too expensive to test into a counterspell, or too important to want to give it up.
Yep, I can see that perspective. I do think that's more of the glass half full type of outlook.
My
Halftime
glasses are always half full.
your glasses?
Of snacks.
And soda.
Only
I
Coke
see the
Zero.
Diet Coke stash in the pantry, TJ. We have crates
What to
I don't
do,
like Diet Coke.
What to
of Coke
do.
Zero.
There you go.
I mean, they're the same thing, TJ. We can break it to you.
They're not.
Okay, they're not, except they are.
Maybe chemically. But
Or
not,
factually.
But not taste.
Okay, pretty decent results. Not the best, but it could have been a lot worse.
Could have been 5 damage to face.
Oh, that would have been disastrous. But he at least killed off 2 of the 1 health minions, and now he has an opportunity to kill off a Dreamwake Guardian or a Dryad. I actually don't know the actual terminology of this. What are those minions, DJ?
Crystal Dryads. I knew that off of memory.
Well done. This is a good trade here from PNC, recognizing that Fr0zen would probably like to play a 4-mana minion. Fr0zen tests for Vaporize and Ice Barrier. So now should have confirmation that this is a spell-related.
There is merit to just playing Fairy Dragon and Hero Powering, because it actually puts the same amount of power on board. And you get to essentially protect 2 more of your power.
Right, you're actually putting more power overall on the board. But this is scarier for PNC, threat-wise. And now Fr0zen's debating if he wants to restrict the board size, because he knows that there's a high chance for tertiary deck, so by trading here means Sea Giant's online. As well as Rabbit Bouncer becomes harder to play.
As long as it keeps out arrows.
Halftime Scavenger. Oh boy. That is a blessing of ancients.
But Fr0zen has narrowed this down to Counterspell and Spellbender.
Yeah, maybe Fr0zen doesn't play the Blessing of Ancients here. Instead goes for the Cable Rat. But I think the upside of the Blessing of Ancients is too high. And what stinks a lot is that the Twin Spell doesn't go off either.
Yeah.
So now Fr0zen doesn't get the second half of the Blessing of Ancients.
Yeah. Now, I think that that's still the correct play, because like I mentioned earlier, with not that many spells in deck and all of them being super impactful, it's better to get the mana expenditure out of the way to test for Counterspell now than it is to try and just play minions and wait, because eventually you'll have to play a spell to win the game. It's unlikely that he wins the game just by playing a bunch of minions and hitting them. He's going to have to play Saboteur or Power of the Wild, so he might as well get that out of the way now, because his minion development with the other 3 mana would have been a couple of 1/1s.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. The nice silver lining to this very dark cloud is that PNC just witnessed, which was drawing 2 out of 3 spells versus Book of Specters, is that he gains a little bit of armor. Halftime Scavenger has an overkill mechanic from the Rastakhan's Rumble expansion, where if you deal damage in excess of their health, you get additional benefit. In this position, anything he trades into, 3 is more than 2 life. Therefore, you'll gain 3 armor.
Time runs out
2
on
of Halftime Scavengers. Very clutch.
Discarding the Arcane Intellect, though, pretty brutal.
Yes, given that his hand could use a lot of help. Oh boy.
Oh,
Imperial
boy.
Lackey discovering a spell. High potential here. Fr0zen, if he doesn't want to play the Lackey now, can go for the Microtech controller.
Ugh.
Is there any synergy with Psych Melon? Absolutely none. Stampeding Roar does literally nothing. And so I guess it by default swipe.
Does Stampeding Roar do nothing?
It summons a beast from your hand, right?
Yeah, he's got a another Fairy Dragon, doesn't he? Oh, it's a dragon. Never mind.
I mean, he's a Cable Rat.
If he was playing his tertiary deck and had Keeper Steladris and played Keeper Steladris with Power of the Wild. No, because it's still a spell, right? The beast that you get from Power of the Wild from Keeper Steladris,
Yeah.
still a spell. So yeah, you're right.
Don't act so surprised, TJ.
Oh, Evil Caber Rat's Beast.
Yep.
All right.
Hmm.
I always forget about that.
I only know that because I needed a beast off of the top for kill command activation one time, and I had Evil Cable Rat in my deck, and I saw it on the draw. I was like really disappointed, and then it was like hovering. I was like, oh wait, it is a beast. I was like, oh, I guess I lose, and then I'm like, oh wait, it is a beast. I get that extra 2 damage. So PNC here with a mana cyclone opportunity to draw 1 spell, 1 opportunity.
Time runs out on me.
Sees everything that he's ever wanted in 1 moment. Does he get it? Up? Or does he just let it slip?
I think he captured it, Dan. I think he did.
It's a really good one. But also, to be quite honest, I think PNC is safe enough to drop Mountain Giant next turn, too. At least, that's what he thinks. The power of Savage Roar is very difficult to overcome.
So there's 3 damage on board, 12 plus Savage Roar. So it's still a ways off.
I just immediately start counting as the Savage Roar is going to deal 15 damage. I know that's not even necessarily possible, given that even amount. But, like, okay, if I count 3 damage on board plus half my life, I'm feeling pretty safe.
Yeah. Power of Creation does have the chance to be incredibly impactful with Sunwalker, or even better, damage Stegatron.
What to do? What to do?
Yeah, but then I think waiting for Khadgar Power Creation is too idealistic here.
Yeah. I don't know, though. You may never get another chance to play Mountain Giant, though.
Lord of the Arena.
But Karen is just, it's so good. It doesn't block damage, but it's so good.
The value. It's gotta be Lord of the Arena here.
I mean, this choice right here is gonna tell us a lot about who PNC is as a person.
Runs out on me.
As a human being.
As a human being. Does he snatch value in the face of incredible diversity? Or does he play it safe? He plays it safe.
Given that Druid has 2 cards in the hand, they're not known for card draw, I think playing it safe is totally fine here.
Yeah. I know everything about PNC now.
I think that's a fair assumption to make. Fr0zen has the Forest Aid, which can fill up the 5 slots that will remain when Fr0zen trades off these 3 minions. It's the 1 copy of Forest Aid, by the way. Ooze is a dead draw. PNC has minions to play now. This is what you're talking about. Maybe this Mountain Giant comes down in this spot.
Yeah. Mountain Giant, trade into a bomb, trade into a treant.
You trade into a bomb here?
I think so.
But you know he has a 2nd Forest Aid, so you're kind of helping him get board presence.
But long term, it plays around Savage Roar, right?
It does.
I guess
but
not.
Savage Roar is 2 damage regardless on the bomb.
What to do?
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just telling you that. Well, actually, I kind of like the offensive plan too. I'm not going to lie. Like, if
Trade
you
to a treant and face?
if you do 12 damage, your opponent goes from 29 to 17, and then you have
Time runs out on me.
a Mountain Giant on board.
Archmage
What
United
to
is even
do?
more interesting.
What to do?
If I'm playing Antonis, I'm playing something else with it, like an Ooze. Or maybe even the Apprentice. Probably not the Apprentice. The Ooze and the Apprentice have very similar.
You require my assistance.
And then all face.
I like the all-face plan.
Yeah. That is a lot of damage.
I like this Antonidas plan too, the more I look at it. Because it makes Fr0zen want to trade. Of course, the downside is he doesn't actually have a lot of gas in the hand. This is... Oh, it's also... Is it just lethal? Oh, it is! Because the hero power has him go through! And he can push 20 damage!
Oh, 20 damage!
Yeah! The bomb damage, TJ. We weren't counting the bomb damage.
I was tunneled on trading over the Archmage Antonitis and how to push
Right.
this damage.
Exactly.
But Fr0zen just wins the game and wins the series. Token Druid. I mean, this kind of mirrors my experience in playing against mages.
Yeah, it was the bomb damage too from the Goblin Bombs that add the extra damage. I thought he was going to be like a point or two off there, but I forgot that when you Savage Roar works both ways. So you know what, TJ? You might have actually
What, Dan?
You might actually be right. Like if you the trading into the bomb isn't the same because the bomb actually does 4 damage. It does 2 damage to the minion and 2 damage through the taunt.
Yeah.
So that's something that I miscalculated, and also another reason why, you know, like I said, I'm a fan of the Explodinator because people don't want to traditionally kill the bombs.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, you don't. You add more power to the board through buffs and through Savage Roar.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult situation to be in.
Because you're killing it for free, right? You're taking
Right.
the 2 damage to get rid of the potential of Power of the Wild, Blessing of Agents, plus Savage Roar. But PNC felt like he was in a position where he needed to take a risk.
I like the Antonitis play in the end because if the opponent didn't have Savage Roar, say they had a big wide buff, then he maybe had an opportunity to utilize Antonitis not only as a trading body, but maybe even a counter-lethal option.
Yeah.
But it would have been tough either way because Fr0zen did have other ways to get through, even if that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and check in with Fr0zen, who's on the line there, assuming his internet can hold up. Fr0zen, you there?
Yo, what's up?
All right, cool. So first of all, talk to us about the choice behind Token Druid, or specifically your version of Token Druid, and also why some of the changes from other ladder lists that people are playing.
So basically, it comes down to what I expect my opponents will play based on what I play. I expect my opponents will think that I play Warrior or Paladin, and in that case, they are very likely to play Warrior themselves or go with like Contra Mage, and both decks kind of lose to Druid. I think that especially Mech Druid now with the Snip Snaps really give you an edge in the Contra matchup, especially if they tech their deck against Warrior.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. What makes Druid, in your opinion, good against the Warrior, considering that I think a lot of people would, at first glance, think that the Warrior does really well against Druid, if not just crushes it?
I think you can tech very well against Warrior, and you have infinite board generation, and your mechs are immune to Dynomatic. I think these are good reasons, and I think that if you really try to play around Warpath, you can do that with a lot of situations with the 4/2 buff or the 3/1 Death Rattle board drop.
Replicating
really helps.
Menace.
Yeah, that one.
Gotcha. Cool. Was this your idea, or did because I know you've been collaborating with Dog a lot, but this week it seemed like you guys have different opinions entirely.
I think Dog's in a completely different scenario that I am because of what we brought and who our opponents are. So we had to split this week. I don't think Druid was a good call for him.
Okay, gotcha. TJ, any questions for Fr0zen here?
Yeah. I want to talk about your tertiary deck a little bit. It didn't come into play, obviously, but you have the Hungry Crabs. And I want to ask, is this because you expected like Murloc Shamans to come out this week, or did you just kind of realize that you didn't need a tertiary deck for other matchups, so you just decided to have it just in case?
Basically, yeah. I think just in case Murloc Shaman is a thing, I think the deck is kind of weak versus Murloc Shaman, especially if they run the Thunderhead list. And I just want to cover some of the bad matchups.
Okay.
So do you think that this list that you have without Whispering Woods and all that is just a tournament deck, or do you feel like this is a build that people should continue to use more that doesn't have Whispering Woods and focuses more on the mech package?
I think mostly this deck was good. It looked a lot better on HS Replay, our stats websites, and
okay.
I think the Whispering Woods is a little bit outdated in the current meta.
Okay, all right, you heard it here, dude. I was I was talking about Whispering Woods on Omnistone, and I was like, yeah, like I can see why cutting it might be reasonable because of all the other things. And then Fr0zen are like, no, you should never cut Whispering Woods from this deck list. It's like it might be just for a tournament only.
All right, the thing about Whispering Woods is that since you have so many minions that generate board, say you play like Snip Snap on 3, and you have like a curve into it, your Whispering Woods doesn't actually generate a full hand, and you're less reliant on Whispering Woods to win the game by itself, especially since the meta is more reactive. Like you don't have to rely on one Whispering Woods and then clear, like fight board versus the zoo, for instance, with like a roar or buff. You can like actually rely on your turn 1, turn 2, turn 3.
Yeah, it's true. And then no one wants to really kill the bombs either, so that takes up even more
Yeah,
space.
it does.
It's a really good observation for sure. Well, good. Congrats on your win, Fr0zen. 2-0 very fast, and putting Druid on the board, which I think it needed a W since Druid was struggling. Good luck in your match later this weekend.
I actually think that I played very poorly, and I probably deserve all the criticism that everyone gave me. I'll try to do better next week, and I was definitely distracted a bit.
Was it the Blessing of Ancients turn where you're like, oh, I should have buffed this
Yeah,
board?
I thought I had the twin spell, like I missed it. Like I played it before.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's what
I
it
see.
makes sense. We're trying to rationalize it, but
Yeah.
all right. Well, hey, I mean, you pick it up for the next match, and I think people will forget because it happens even to the best of us. Either way, again, congrats, and we'll see you later this weekend for your second match.
All right, thank you.
All right. So Fr0zen, you know what? A win's a win. I might be biased because he's on my fantasy team. I'm like, you know what? It's all right, man. You got the W.
Not a misplay.
In competition, the results are everything. In practice, in theory, and preparation, it's not results-oriented thinking. But, in the end, what matters is who got the W and who takes home the L.
Yeah, there's nothing that I enjoy more with being results-oriented and arguing with Admiral about it.
Yes. All right. Well, that's our third match that's in the books. We got more action coming up for you. Can the Hunter go up against Mage as Amnesiac will be making his appearance tonight here and see if he can climb out of the dumpster. We're just getting underway here for the Week 4 second day of competition. Don't go anywhere. More HSGM right after this.